Alright, another Algebra 1 video. This is 9.6 part 2. We're doing a little more quadratic formula. We're adding some wrinkles today. So the first important thing for quadratic formula is every problem we've done so far, it's like 3x squared plus 2x minus 4 equals 0. It equals 0 at the beginning. Today we're going to deal with a whole bunch that don't equal 0 from the beginning. So let's take our first example. Is going to be 2c squared minus 3c equals 4. This is an example where it doesn't equal 0 from the get-go, but to get it equal to 0 is actually pretty easy. You just subtract 4 from both sides. You get 2c squared minus 3c minus 4 equals 0. And then you do the quadratic formula with a equals 2, b equals negative 3, and c equals negative 4. Go back real quick, make sure I'm recording. Cool. Had some issues with that of late. Alright, our quadratic formula is that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you're having a hard time remembering this, write it down so you always have it. A little note that came up during the stream is that this 4ac is 4 times a times c. So some people get confused with that at the end. When we have letters next to each other like that, we assume that they are multiplied in math. So, let's plug stuff in. Negative 3 is positive 3. Plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 4. All over 2 times 2. Hunky-dory, we keep going. We get x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of, let's simplify all this junk, 9. And then negative times negative, this is going to be a plus. 4 times 2 is 8, times 4 is 32. Which means, if I simplify that inside further, that I get 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 4. And we're actually done here because the square root of 41 is, 41's a prime number, nothing goes into it. So we could actually just type into Pearson, x equals 3 plus the square root of 41 over 4, comma 3 minus the square root of 41 over 4. And we'd be good to go. So the only added step here is getting it equal to 0 at the beginning. And this is the same rule that has to work for factoring for you to be able to solve it. So for both factoring and quadratic formula, we need to be equal to 0 from the get-go. Okay, our next type of question that comes at us on this homework is the kind where it doesn't equal 0 in a different way. So if we have something like y equals 3x squared plus x minus 5. This is another question we can use quadratic formula on that would potentially be hard to solve. This one just has an x as our middle term, so a would be 3, b would be 1, and c would be negative 5. We use our quadratic formula, but I ignored something. What did I ignore? I ignored the fact that it doesn't equal 0, it equals y. So the way this question is going to be asked on your online homework is they're going to be like, find the x-intercepts. And what's true about x-intercepts? If I think about a graph, the x-intercepts are like where I go through the x-axis. And at any point where I go through the x-axis, y is 0. Which makes this question actually just 0 equals 3x squared plus x minus 5. So it is exactly the same as our other questions. So if it asks for the x-intercepts, you make y 0, and that turns it into our other types of questions. So we can just jump straight to the quadratic formula. And if we do that, x is equal to negative b, negative 1, plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 4 times 3 times negative 5, all over 2 times 3. Okay, let's simplify the inside of that square root. -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 plus, again, because I have a negative times a negative. 4 times 3 is 12, times 5 is 60. 61 is prime again, so I'm actually done now. And if you're curious what this thing is in the bottom corner, I gotta take my computer to school because it's not Windows updating correctly at my house. Feels bad. And that is our final answer there. We could split it up to write it in Pearson. So the x-intercept questions don't really add a lot of complexity. It just means make the y equal to 0, and it looks exactly like our other questions. The last type of new question is actually a vocab word. They're going to ask you for the discriminant. This is actually a pretty hard word to spell. Discriminant. I should dot all my I's. Okay, so the discriminant is not the full quadratic formula. So the full quadratic formula looks like this. And the discriminant is only this part, the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now, the nice part about looking at the discriminant is from the discriminant, you can tell whether or not there is 2 answers, 1 answer, or 0 answers. Here's the way you do it. If your discriminant is positive, you have 2 answers. If your discriminant is 0, you have 1 answer. If your discriminant is negative, you have 0 answers, because you can't have a negative in a square root. And this is all you need to know for discriminant. So for the last 3 questions on the homework, it's going to ask you the things about the discriminant and whether or not there's 1, 2, or 0 answers. And all you have to do is evaluate b squared minus 4ac. If you get a positive in there, then sorry, for the discriminant, you actually don't even need the square root, because it's really, is this b squared minus 4ac thing positive, 0, or negative? And all you're going to have to do is plug in b squared minus 4ac in the question. The coefficient of x is b, and the coefficient of x squared and the number at the end are a and c. And you're going to see if they're positive, negative, or 0. So let's try some examples. Essentially, these are like short quadratic formula questions. So let's say I have something like, no, I've been doing way too many 3s today. Let's make this a little more exciting. Let's do 7x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, I do my discriminant check. b squared minus 4ac. 4 is b squared. Minus 4 times 7 times negative 3. Is this positive, negative, or 0? Well, negative times a negative makes those positive, so this is positive. Notice how I didn't even need to find the value? So 2 answers. Whoops, answers. Cool, that's it. That's discriminant checking. So let's try another one here. 2x squared plus 3x plus 17. b squared minus 4ac. Let's go. We get 3 squared, 9, minus 4 times 2 times 17. This is going to be positive, and we're subtracting it, and it's like big. Like I'm too lazy to figure it out. So we're going to be negative. So 0 answers. That's it. That's the discriminant game. If it's negative, it's 0 answers. If it's 0, there's 1 answer. If it's 0, usually you can factor it pretty easily. But anyways, and if you get a positive inside the square root, the b squared minus 4ac term, you get 2 answers. That's all she wrote for this assignment. Realistically, it's almost kind of easier today than it was the day before. So that's kind of cool. Only 6 questions on the homework. 3 of them just doing this discriminant check thing. So I wish you luck, and I'll sign out here. Thank you to those of you who have been attending the live stream. You do get homework credit, so if your homework category is kind of lame, or if you just kind of want more credit because you were doing poorly when we left for break, know that I do give credit, and they are Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. We kind of wrapped up early last time, so maybe 2 to 2:45 on average. And you can show up and get help with any of the stuff on here. Okay, that's it. Homework's on ClassLink. Good luck. Bye-bye.